right, so today, guys, absolute value equations. Okay, super easy, I promise. It's going to be easy. But the first thing we have to do is understand and remember, we did this in algebra and we did this in pre-algebra. What is the absolute value of -7? Correct. It is 7. Very good. And then the absolute value of 7 is 7. Why is the absolute value of -7 and 7 7? What is the definition of absolute value? What is the definition? You guys remember? Definition. Anybody at home? Mariana, Lily. What do you got? Ethan, Juliana, Taylor. What is the definition of an absolute value?
The magnitude of a real number without regard to its sign.
What's that? So you're Googling it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. All right, let's just make it easy. It's a distance from 0. And distance is always positive, right? So -7 on a number line, if you look at a number line, here's 0, here's -7, and here's 7. They both have the same distance. They are 7 steps away from 0, okay? So that's what really the definition of an absolute value, okay? All right, so let's put this into action. When we take a look at example 1, the whole idea of this whole section is I have the absolute value of x equals 7. Well, from what we learned up here, there are 2 numbers that work for this solution, right? I can plug in 7 and make that work, and I can plug in -7, right? The absolute value of -7 is 7, and the absolute value of 7 is 7, so there are 2 answers that work, plus or minus 7. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to rewrite the question, and you're going to make this positive and negative. There are 2 answers that work for it. So 99% of the time, there are 2 answers that work. All right? So let's make this tougher.
Wait, but how would you put that into like MyMathLab?
There's a symbol for plus or minus. Or you can write 7. So the question is, how do you do it for MyMathLab? You can do 7, -7, or I believe there's a symbol for plus or minus 7. Or it might be multiple guess or multiple choice, and you find the one that matches. Okay, so great question. So now when we take a look at the next one, we have 5x plus 3 equals 7. When we have something like this, we have our absolute value isolated. It's all by itself. And then we take 5x plus 3 and set it equal to plus or minus 7. Okay? Now, that means that we have to create 2 equations here. We're going to have 5x plus 3 equals 7. And then we're going to have 5x plus 3 equals -7. Okay, so the only thing that's changed is this is a positive and that's a negative. So now we have 2 equations that we got to solve. Okay, so this one I'm going to subtract the 3 over. So I've got 5x equals 4, and then the last step, how do I get that x by itself, y'all? Shout it out. Divide. 5 times x, the opposite of times is division. So then we get x equals 4/5. And then we got to do the orange one. The beautiful thing is you solve it exactly the same way. We subtracted 3 over here. We're going to subtract 3 over here. And we get 5x equals, what is that, -10? Divide by 5. And we get x equals, what is that? -10 divided by 5, what is that? -2, y'all? So we get our 2 answers. We get -2 and 4/5. Okay, MyMathLab will probably ask you to write it with commas, so they'll have like x equals and there'll be a blank. if it's not multiple choice. So it'd be 4/5, comma, -2. And the comma for me is right next to the M on your keyboard. How's that? You guys have any questions? So it's not too bad. You've done this before. This is review. You've seen this before. This should be easy points. So when I take a look at the next one, example 3, guys, I've got 1/2 x minus 1. The absolute value of that is equal to 5. So then I know that there's 2 equations. I know that there's 1/2 x minus 1 equals positive 5. And then the other equation I have is the exact same thing. 1/2 x minus 1 equals -5. And now we solve it. First thing you would do to solve, y'all, add the 1. And now we have 1/2 x equals 6. Last step, how do I get the x by itself? You can divide by 1/2 or you can multiply by 2/1, the reciprocal, right? Flippy flip. So multiply by 2/1 or 2. So you can divide by 1/2. If you take 6 and divide by 0.5 in your calculator, you get the right answer, or just multiply by 2. And we get x equals 12 for that one. Okay. Now again, the nice thing is when you solve it, it's the exact same 2 steps. All right, so first thing we do, we add that 1 over. We get 1/2 x, -5 plus 1, -4. And then we do the same thing. We can divide by 1/2, or I prefer multiplying by the reciprocal, which is 2, or 2/1, so that these cancel. And we get x equals, what is that, -8? Mm-hmm. So we get our 2 answers. We get 12 and -8. Again, in my math lab, that would be 12 comma -8 or -8 comma 12. It shouldn't matter on how you type it in. Okay. All right, questions so far. Give me a thumb. Give me a thumb. You can use the chat too. If you're not having your picture on the, you can go to the chat. If you look on the chat, there's a yes, no, there's more. If you go to more, you can go coffee break, clap your hands, thumbs up, thumbs down. What's the clock one? More time, or I'm away. Look at that. Need a break. Do you need a break? Everybody's putting need a break. No. Jasmine, Jasmine needs a break. We're almost done, guys. Look at, there is no backside. Oh, there is. There's a 7. I lied. All right. So let's take, and I mean, we're almost halfway done. Here we go. So let's take a look. Let me pin myself. Ethan, you're making me sick here, moving around. All right. Now, when you do this, you want to isolate the absolute value first before you do the plus or minus. So don't do plus or minus first. The first thing you want to do is isolate that absolute value of 2x. So the first thing we want to do is subtract 5. So now I have the absolute value of 2x is equal to 7 minus 5, we agree, is 2. Now we have to break that apart. Okay, so now we have our 2 equations. We have 2x equals 2. And then the other equation is 2x equals -2. All right, so again, isolate your absolute value before you do the plus or minus part. Now this is ready to go. Divide by 2, divide by 2. We get 1. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. And we get what? -1? Okay. And if you try this and you do 2x plus 5 equals 7 and 2x plus 5 equals -7, it is not going to work out correctly. So you need to isolate the absolute value. Get the absolute value by itself. All right, so let's take a look at 5. Okay, this is probably as hard as it would get, in my opinion. We need to isolate absolute value first. Exclamation point. First, isolate your absolute value. So I have 2 times the absolute value of x plus 25 equals 23. First thing you would do. Let's look at 6 first before we do 5. I want to do 6 because I don't like these numbers that I see here. So we're going to come back to 5. Let me do 6 first. Sorry, I'm going out of order. When we look at number 6, it says solve the absolute value of x equals -7. What's wrong with this problem?
There's already a negative.
This guy right here. Anytime you guys get an absolute value by itself equal a negative number, can you ever have a distance from 0 to be negative? Distances are always positive, right? Absolute values never, ever can be negative. So if you ever have an absolute value equal a negative number, guess what we got? The null set, no solution, the empty set, no solution.
Is there a sign for this on the method?
There should be something like no solution as an option, or there'll be the null set, the circle with the slash through it. There's a solution. So again, anytime you get an absolute value equals a negative, no solution, can't do it. All right, let's change up number 5. Let's just be crazy. I'm going to make this 23. I'm going to make this a 27 just for fun. So I've changed the problem on you guys, so just make it nice and pretty. So I have 2 times the absolute value of x plus 25 equals 27. Okay, so I'm just going to say that's a typo for now. All right, we want to isolate the absolute value of x. So we got to move this 25 and that 2 out of there. How do we do that? Correct. Minus 25. So now I have 2 times the absolute value of x. 27 minus 25 we know is 2. Now we have one more step. That is 2 times the absolute value of x. How do I get rid of 2 times? We're going to divide over. Right? The opposite of times is division. Right? Reduce. These guys cancel. Cancel. And I get the absolute value of x. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And what's the absolute value of 1? 1 and -1. So if you got the plus or minus symbol, you can choose plus or minus 1. If not, do 1 comma -1. There are 2 solutions there. You guys okay with that? All right, so we've done 6 examples. Let's do one more, guys, and the rest of the time is going to be yours to work on MyMathLab and ask questions and get that stuff done. All right, so the last one, we have solve. Now I have the absolute value of 3x plus 2 equals the absolute value of 5x minus 8. Okay? Very, very similar to what we were just doing. We're going to take this guy, 3x plus 2, and set it equal to 5x minus 8. And we're going to take that 3x plus 2 for the other equation and set it equal to the opposite of 5x minus 8. Because it's a binomial, I'm going to put parentheses around it and put the negative in front. Okay? And then we're going to solve for x here. So as I take a look, we solve. We subtract the 3x over. So we get 2 equals 5x minus 3x. We know is what? 2x minus 8. Now what? People at home, what do I do now? Riley, Kai, Jose, Taylor, Lily,
Add the 8.
Isabel. You add the 8 over. 2 plus 8 we know is 10. And the last step, we can divide by 2. Divide by 2. 10 divided by 2 is what, 5?
5.
Okay. So that one's pretty easy. The tricky one is now when you write this one, we want to make sure this side is negative. So we want to distribute that negative to each one. So now we have a negative 5x, and a negative times a negative 8 is now a positive 8. So basically what I did is I changed every sign for that binomial. All right, so what do you guys want to do? How do we want to solve this thing? Minus the 2 over. Okay, so we get 3x equals negative 5x. 8 minus 2 is 6. And 5x over. So that gives me 8x equals 6. And then we can go ahead and what? Divide. And then for you pirates out there, we want to reduce that by what? 2? 6/8 reduced is 3/4. My guess is my math lab wants fractions. Okay, so 3/4. You guys okay with that? Any questions? Now, at any point I want to check my work. We're not using photo math. We talked about that. We're not using that. But you could go ahead and take this and plug this in, right? We could plug in 5 here. 3 times 5 is what? 15. 15 plus 2 is 17. And then plug in 5 here. 5 times 5 is 25, and 25 minus 8 is 17, so it works out perfect. You could do the same thing with 3/4. I would probably use my calc to do that. That's too much adding, subtracting fractions and stuff. You can just throw that in the calculator. But we could do it if you really want to. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the different possibilities that you're going to see when you're solving absolute equations.